and welcome to our fourth and final Startup Women webinar for 2025. This webinar is for expanding your customer base, providing proven strategies for growth. I'm Isabel Nolan, Director of Programs at Startup Canada. To begin, even though I'm currently calling in from Ireland, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that the land on which Startup Canada operates and was founded on is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, also known as Ottawa. And as we're a national organisation, I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples of this land. And I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you're residing on today. So you're all very welcome. We welcome you and encourage you to connect with each other in the chat. Make sure you are sending messages to everyone in the room. Today's session will be recorded and we'll add it to our YouTube channel afterwards as well. Startup Canada, if you're not familiar with us, is a national nonprofit that's the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business in Canada. And Startup Women, it's an annual program offering support to early stage women identifying entrepreneurs across Canada through topic focused webinars like today, industry roundtables, and meetings with startup women leaders. And we know that when you support women, you truly do support a nation. Before we get started, we have a short message from one of our co-presenting partners, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
The Scotiabank Women Initiative is dedicated to your success on your terms.
I'm shaping our industry's vision for the future.
I can expand my business without borrowing from my family.
I know I can face anything thanks to my network.
I'm ready for my next chapter.
I'm inspiring future leaders.
I'm making sure my family's future is secure.
Define your success, and we'll help you achieve it. With unbiased access to capital and tailored solutions, bespoke specialized education, and holistic advisory services and mentorship. Join our community of women today, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
Also like to thank our other co-presenting partner, UPS, our ecosystem partners, Constant Contact, Mastercard, and WEOC, and our community of community partners, and we'll add them to the chat. Without their generous support, we really wouldn't be able to do what we do, so thank you all so much. Okay, today's conversation is really focusing on effective customer acquisition and tactics to build a loyal customer base and achieve sustainable business growth and take you, further on from just your friends and family circle. We've prepared some questions for our panelists. However, if you do have a question, you can add that into the Q&A box on the bottom function bar on your screen, and we'll do our best to answer it live. And if we can't get to it, then we can certainly follow up with you. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce our speakers for today. We have Rowena Tsang, who is the Director of Segmentation at UPS, Amanda Parker, who is the Country Manager at Constant Contact, Afnane Lagha, who is the Manager of Marketing Strategy at Air Miles Reward Program, and Nichole Ettlin, who's Senior Manager of Customer Advocacy and Content Marketing at Totango. Hello and welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for participating in today's webinar. So we've got lots to cover over the next just under an hour. But I want to open it up to a question to all of you. And then maybe before you answer your question, you can just provide a quick 1 or 2 sentences about yourselves and the organization that you're here representing. So many early stage entrepreneurs are starting by selling their products or their services to their immediate network. At what point should they be starting to look beyond this friends and family circle? And what's the first step in doing it effectively? Amanda, can I go to you first?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. For those not familiar with Constant Contact, we're a small business marketing solution that makes marketing easy and effective for small businesses and not for profits around the world. And I'm really proud to lead all of our Canadian operations. Isabel, to answer your question, really your immediate network is that first testing ground, right? Like you have a joke, you have a new business idea. Who do you run it by? You run it by your trusted friends and family. And so, continue to do that. Once you've kind of validated that, and honestly, I test most of my emails, most of the things I write against my immediate audience because they give you fantastic feedback. But kind of once you validated that those people are interested in buying and you're starting to expand that network, not just because they know you, but because you're really providing the value, that's truly the time to expand, to really start to put fuel on your fire. And the first step is really to understand patterns on who's saying yes. Are they the women in your network? Are they, the entrepreneurs in your network? What do they look like? And then how can you go out and start to find more of those to really expand that network and constantly test and learn? So I would start small, start personal, and then expand kind of chunks at a time.
So you're kind of using your personal network as your sandbox in a sense to get through.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Nichole, can I go to you?
Yeah, building off of a little bit what Amanda just said there, it's totally natural to be selling to either close friends or family or people that you know within your network, since you might have a product or a service that is available for people in your network or individuals, but you also might want to sell to people that you've worked with in the past or other companies that you've seen at conferences, people within your network. And so I think that's totally natural. And I think it's a great way to be able to start too, because a lot of times you have that opportunity to be able to have mutual benefit with that relationship too. So you might be selling to a friend or family member, you might be selling to somebody within your network, but they might also have something as a small business to be able to provide to you. And so we've seen a lot of great success in being able to partner up with another small business that's also looking to expand. We have something that each other doesn't, and we're able to help provide that to each other. And I think that's a really great opportunity that businesses can take for mutual benefit, because you're each getting a customer, but you're also getting a tool, knowledge, a partnership, mentorship, and other things that can help you along the way in your growth.
I love that cross collaboration and in the ecosystem and supporting each other. That's a great idea. Rowena, with your work at UPS, you're working with so many different small businesses. What have you seen work sort of time and time again when they're moving past this initial personal network?
Well, personally, by the time they get to someone like where we're working directly with those customers, they're usually a bit larger in size. So for the most part, I work with maybe a bit larger companies that have actually gone through the growth stage past the family and friends. So can't really speak to that, unfortunately.
No problem at all. Afnan, how about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Afnane. And to answer the question, you mentioned like at what point should they start looking beyond friends and family? I think there's no perfect timing, to be honest. I think it's a lot about readiness too. Like, are you ready to sell more? Are you ready for that extra visibility? Do you have the resources to do so? And if you do, let's look at how are you attracting people? Do you have organic traction in the market? Do you see that like even like one person or two beyond your family and friend is interested in your product, or like it's just a lead, didn't even convert? I think that's a very great sign, because that proves that you have your value proposition in the market. You have found your people. Try to understand who are those people, where they are, where do they buy, what is the best way to go to them, where is the channel and the distribution to distribute that product to that public, and you can go from there. See what works and just scale from whatever is working for your business and your brand.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for those pieces of advice. And I'm seeing some great um uh noise and chatter in the chat box, so thank you so much. So as a reminder, if you would like to add a question into the Q&A box, please do so, and we'll do our best to get it answered for you. So Amanda, Constant Contact, you're working with quite a lot of small businesses, thousands of them. What do the most successful ones do differently when it comes to customer acquisition?
Yeah, the most successful businesses are really focused on a couple of core things that work for them, because otherwise you're doing so much in your business, right? And you're also typically trying to be the chief marketing officer, the chief product officer, the chief all these things, and so by trying to do too many things, you're trying to boil the ocean. And so we find the most successful small businesses really focus on a couple of core things that work for them, typically in 1 to 2 channels. And so the way to find those channels is by starting to test into it and then see where your best customers, where do they live, and really focusing. So if you are a small retail business and you're noticing most of your customers are kind of living within Instagram and Facebook, those are two great places to really go kind of deep into versus trying to go across LinkedIn and TikTok and everything else. So start small, really focus on a couple of core things that work, hone your message, and then expand after that. We find a lot of businesses try to do it all right out of the gate, but by just starting incremental by what's already working for you within the customer segments that are buying for you, that's going to help you find more of those.
Brilliant advice. Thank you, Amanda. And Rowena, with a lot of businesses, I often hear that they think, having more customers automatically means growth. But those logistical and operational pieces can become bottlenecks sometimes. Do you have any advice for companies on how they could prepare operationally, before scaling?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. I think obviously every company is trying to grow. But when you look at from the logistics standpoint, the two key things I would first focus on to make sure you can scale in a profitable way is, and a sustainable way is the profitability as well as the service. You don't want those two failing. So in terms of service, for example, I've worked with smaller customers in the get-go where they're still filling out waybill. I know this sounds very antiquated, but when you're scaling, anything that is mundane, from processing the shipment, from creating a shipping label, to answering where is my package type questions, all that needs to have system integration. It needs to be at the tips of your customer service hands so that they can address those questions, address those processes very quickly, and be able to then scale and work on other things that maybe require a little bit more attention. So definitely get that automation done, get those mundane tasks streamlined. And the major thing on the logistics standpoint, on the profitability side, is shipping. Especially if you're scaling, you're going international, the shipping cost is going to look starkly different from your domestic shipments. You have to look at returns. What is that process going to look like? Are you going to, take a piece of that returns in terms of the cost? And then really thinking about the commodity as well. So if you are, for example, shipping something that's perishable, and you have a box right now with gel packs, you're shipping domestically, the pack out might be, 48 hours. But if you're going all the way to Australia, you might need a completely different system, more gel pack, more ice pack to keep that product fresh. That's just going to add costs, not just on the container system, but also on the shipping costs. And finally, I think everyone's knows about this, the tariffs. Changes in rules, regulation, tariffs. Really make sure you know what that final landed cost is. So I would recommend kind of going deep dive into that before you identify the markets you want to scale and target the ones you want to scale.
And to that point, it's, you can, before you start scaling out and growing, and to your point of having all those mundane tasks streamlined and everything working well, there are new processes that you'll have to come up with, and it's not necessarily one size fits all. It's like, okay, this is working, and what how can we incorporate a larger scale of it, but then what needs to come in, what do we now need to consider? So yeah, great.
100%.
Afnan, in working with Air Miles, that whole model is really built around loyalty. How can small businesses apply loyalty principles to retain new customers that they've acquired?
Yeah, I think Airmail is a loyalty program. I think small businesses don't need to have like a very complex system of like miles, point, or currency. So don't be scared of like the loyalty program that you could build. There is like a lot of small ways to do that. I think one thing to keep in mind is loyalty really begins once your first transaction ends. So when you have a customer, you acquired it, you converted that customer, now you need to keep it because it's, first of all, way more efficient to keep a customer than acquire a new one. So that's something to keep in mind. So when we say like point and miles, to take the example of air miles or any other currency, that's a strategy to really help you prevent your customer to go have the same product in a competition, because once they get the point, they want to reuse it again. So they're going to keep coming till they have enough point to have, let's say, that free transaction or that like 30% off or 20% off. But I also think that what matters is the moment. So keep that relationship alive after that first purchase, when that first transaction ends. So instead of like focusing on rewarding in point or like something like tangible, there's a lot of like other ways to recognize the person. Repeated visits, for example, referrals, reviews, social mention. So when collector, I was going to say collector, sorry, that's like a very loyalty terms, but like when your customer do all of those things, you need to reward it. You need to make them feel seen and feel appreciated for what they're doing. And it can be as simple as, hey, you refer someone, you have a 5% off, a 10% off. And to go back to my first point earlier, it's really much about what your business can afford today to put that in place.
Excellent. And kind of building on top of that, Nichole, I'd love if you can talk about a lot of entrepreneurs are focusing on the acquisition but neglect the retention and the advocacy piece of what that journey looks like for their customers. How can those two areas actually fuel customer growth?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I guess I should mention too, I feel like a lot of people have, of course, heard of Air Miles, UPS, Constant Contact. Maybe some people have never heard of Totango before, which is totally okay. But Totango is a customer growth platform, and we're focused on customer management. We're focused on churn prediction and prevention, and we're focused on post-sales forecasting. So we spend a lot of time in that post-sales area with customer success, with revenue operations, and focusing on things like retention, renewal, and expansion. And so a lot of times we find, we can get caught up in those big wins of new sales, which is totally fine and a good thing because it's really exciting. New business is important. It keeps momentum going. But I'm not sure if everyone else is feeling this right now, but new sales and new business has felt harder than it has ever felt before because there are so many different macro environmental things coming at us that are making those types of transactions more challenging. So I think it is really, really important to focus on advocacy and retention because, as we know, it's 7 times cheaper to grow a current customer than it is to acquire a new one on average. And so one of the things that really fuels retention is advocacy. If you've got advocacy, you can fuel retention, which will fuel growth in the future. And customer growth is increasingly becoming one of those really important things for a lot of companies, because again, the money's got to come from somewhere. And new business is still a really important channel, but we can get a lot through developing our products, developing our services, offering more to our current customers, and working with them to understand what's valuable to them and increasing that partnership between them. It makes for cheaper acquisition and growth, of course, but it also makes for really great relationships, for future expansion, for more partnership, and for more learning across those different teams, departments, industries, and long-term growth for companies, which I think is really equally or more as important as that boom at the beginning, which can also feel really good.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. And I think a kind of good next section to the conversation around building customer acquisition, of course, but then having that retention piece. What sort of metrics and such should and I'm gonna kind of pass this out to all of our speakers. What sort of metrics should folks be looking at? How can they best look for the signs of customer retention, or how they can build out a retention plan based off of the metrics that they are getting from their customers. Amanda, yeah.
Sure. I think honestly, this is a start with the basics. What we find in a lot of our data is that small businesses have email lists. They have contacts that they've collected from various different things, either through selling or through trade shows, different things, and they're not utilizing those. So you have this gold mine of existing customers, existing contacts that you can really mine to expand your potential revenue opportunity, right? You have kind of hand raisers who have said, hey, I'm happy to stay connected with you. Essentially, please market to me. And we find a lot of small businesses aren't leveraging that. It's a bit of a failure to launch. And I think that's where entrepreneur small businesses can really start with some of those basics, start testing out some of your messaging, measure for interactions, right? It can be as simple as email open rates, clicks, some very simple things. And then you can start to get kind of deeper into your funnel on how much of that is then driving purchases, and connecting those dots across your various different platforms from email, from social to website, and beyond. And so getting some simple systems in place so you're not having to do that manually, and it becomes a very arduous process. There are lots of platforms that can help you. Constant Contact is one, retention tools like Totango and others are other great tools to leverage to help you do some of these things and mine your base. Because to my other panelists' points, new business is harder than ever, and so if you have these hand raisers in your base, that's a gold mine to really start mining.
Brilliant, thank you, Anna. And to mention as well, I Constant Contact are a generous supporter and partner of Startup Canada, and they have offered a 50% off of your first 3 months when you sign up to Constant Contact. We did share it in the chat, but maybe we can share it in the chat again, just in case you're interested in learning more and trying out their services. We use them, we love them. So thank you, Amanda, and your team for providing that. We are getting some great questions in the Q&A box, so I would love to get to some of them. I did see a question come into the chat, and I hope I'm remembering it correctly before I go into these ones, but it talked about the use of, there's so many different platforms that people use and sell on these days. For example, TikTok Shop, that's like a revolutionary thing where it's just everything's one click. It's sort of like a one click, and then you have Amazon as well. How important is a website? And if that's not something that an entrepreneur has, should they be investing in it, or should they see where their audience is going? Again, I'll throw this out to the speakers, whoever wants to unmute themselves.
I have a thought here. I think it really depends on what you're offering and who's buying it. And I know that probably sounds a little too vague, but I'm just thinking about some of the places that I know I've worked, or my friends or my family members have worked. And if you are offering a service that's better promoted or shared on a different channel, I think as long as you are where your potential or ideal buyers are, that's what's most important. And so I do think there's a lot of, personally, I think there's a lot of value in having a website. There's a lot on the internet right now. There's a lot of misinformation and confusing information. I think having a place and a website that contains the accurate information that you're putting out there is valuable. But whether that will actually drive traffic or make a difference in terms of how much money you're making, I think it really depends on your ideal buyer. In the tech space, we see a lot of people doing deep research on technologies. And as a tech company, we of course have a website since we exist online. But for different services or offerings or products, that might not necessarily be the number one driver. But I often think in terms of authenticity or building trust with the user, I personally find websites helpful in that way because there's so many places you can get your information. It's nice to have everything all in one place that you know is accurate and trusting.
Thanks, Nicole. And Amanda, if you wanted to follow on.
Sure. So completely echo everything that Nichole just mentioned, and I'll just kind of add a slight kind of flavor to this. So sometimes like all the social media platforms are fantastic amplification tools, fantastic acquisition tools. However, you never want to become dependent on one of those platforms. You want to try to own the customer relationship as much as possible, because if TikTok shuts down or something regulatory changes or suddenly you get kicked off. We've seen this with a lot, and actually it happened to my sister's small business where she just completely lost access to her Instagram, which was her primary acquisition method for new business. And you've completely then lost your voice with your customers if you don't own those contacts and connections. So I think that's really important. Fantastic to acquire them through those platforms, but also have a way to continue to kind of own that relationship through a website, through email, through other places where you can really own that relationship and your business doesn't become completely reliant on a tool that you have no control over.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Thank you both for answering that. Another attendee question. It's from an anonymous attendee. What if we're starting completely from scratch in a service-based business with no network in the TAM? I actually don't know what they're referring to. But where do we even begin to find clients and build credibility? It's a really great question for anyone that doesn't have a network that they can start with. Maybe Afnane, Rowena, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I would say I don't know what TAM is either. I'm not sure, but does anyone else on the panel know? But I think regardless, whatever you're starting, if you don't have a friends and family that you can, start testing, one thing I would, total addressable market. Got it. Thank you. Too many acronyms these days. But one of the things I personally would definitely do is look at starting competitors. Some of the best practices, what are they doing? What are they targeting? Who are they targeting? Is there a particular persona? Is there a particular industry? Whatever the case is, right? Because especially when you are small, I think it was Amanda who mentioned this, you really want to focus. So you might have this huge market, total addressable market that's big, but you really want to focus your strategy on a persona or a target market and make sure that the plan has a feedback loop, right? That you're always going back to checking the metrics. Is it heading in the right direction that you want? And I think that's very important, especially you'll probably be wearing multiple hats in that company. You don't want to spread yourself too thin because once you do that, it's not all about the quantity, it's about the quality, right? So you want to give it your best shot. I would definitely, yes, check out competitors. What are they doing? Get some idea from there. Start doing your own research. Maybe you find a gap where the actual other competitors didn't find, and you find a sweet spot too, right? So it's not always about copying what your competitor's doing. It's understanding what they're doing, why they're doing it, and it might be a slightly different model than yours. So you need to make sure that you kind of do your check and balances. But once you do, really focus on that one market and do your best in that, and don't spread yourself too thin.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Rowena. Afan, did you have something to add?
Yeah, echoing everything Rowena just mentioned, I think also you have a service based business, so you're probably solving a problem. So if you look at your perfect audience, people who do who are struggling with that problem, where do they share about it? Where do they talk about it? Where can you shine in that environment when people are talking about that issue and that problem, and put your product or your service out there? I think it's a very good way to do that. If it's B2B market, for example, which conference are they attending? Which group and event are they going to, and etc. Try to speak at that event, just like give visibility to your business where the problem is being spoke about.
Excellent. So put yourself where your customer is going to be, or your potential customers could be. Yeah, that's fantastic. Great questions here. So Kat is asking, they say they work full time as well as trying to start their own business, and they don't have the capital to hire a marketer, or any additional help at the moment. What advice do you have to help entrepreneurs like Kat to prioritize, stay focused, and avoid burnout when you're wearing all these hats that we talk about? Amanda.
Amazing job. I think that's absolutely the right way to do it, right? Until you're really feeling that traction in your business, keeping it as a side hustle until it's the right moment to make it your full hustle. So congratulations on taking the step, right? That's often the hardest part. And most entrepreneurs experience this, right? Where you don't have the funds to go out and hire a huge team. And so I think the opportunity, particularly now with AI tools, is you can really find the tools to help you do this at scale, where you're not going to have to spend hours sitting in front of a screen trying to write content, trying to put things out. So it's about finding the tools to automate for you the various different opportunities or the most painful parts of your process. That could be marketing, it could be order fulfillment, it could be shipping, it could be all these things, but there are so many tools that can help you do this. And so by building essentially your tool stack that can help lift a lot of this off of your plate, that is a fantastic way to start. And that'll help you to identify what's working, what's not working, so that when you are in a place to switch from hustle to full time and then begin hiring staff, you have places to plop humans in and start really helping you out. So I would suggest finding the tools that work, and some of that is a little bit of research, and also asking your fellow entrepreneurs, what's working for you? What are you doing to solve for this problem? That can be very helpful in communities like this.
Excellent answer. Thanks, Amanda. And thank you, Kat, for asking that question. I saw in the chat, I'm looking at both areas, the Q&A box and chat, just in case anything pops into the chat. Someone had asked around, identifying which marketing or sales channels would work best for their target audience. So, Nichole, maybe do you have advice on how they can maybe best assess how they can best be selling to their customer base?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to who your customer is, what you're selling, and where they live. And we kind of talked about that. But one of the things that I find is underutilized is something that we like to call a user interview. And sometimes we find that folks are a little bit more open or warm or willing to talk to us. I mean, there are a lot of really amazing people out there that are absolutely interested and willing to give their time, advice, mentorship, and wisdom that they've gained over that time. And so if you're not really sure which channel to start at, or like the earlier question, if you're not really sure where to invest your time when you only have a limited amount, I think it can be a really great tool to reach out to some people that are either in the same industry as you, if you're willing to take that step, or to potential customers and say, hey, I'm not maybe at the place where I'm ready to go all in on selling, but I have an idea. I'd love your advice. I'd love to talk through your own perspectives, how you might perceive this, letting them know that you in that moment are not trying to sell them on your product, but really trying to understand more about them, buyers like them, people like them. I think there are a lot of people that are actually very willing to give their thoughts and opinions. People love to be asked their thoughts and opinions too, and it creates that sense of community. And so if you're not sure where to start, of course, you can try a few, see what works, what doesn't, give it a little bit of time, but also don't be afraid to reach out to other people in what we call those user interviews, to ask them their opinions, to ask them would you respond to this email? Do you like this ad? Asking people for a little bit of time, I think, offers the opportunity for someone else to be a mentor, which I think a lot of people really value. And it offers you the opportunity to learn and engage with somebody who might be able to provide you with more contacts in the future, or references, or just a perspective on the people that you want to reach.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Nichole. Rowena, I'd love to talk about, further talk about the expertise that UPS has with working with businesses of all different sizes. From your perspective and the work that you do, or the businesses you've worked with, do you see any key differences on how small businesses versus large enterprises approach customer segmentation?
Yeah, for sure. The one key thing, I think there's two key things that we do that's starkly different. Is the resource is in at UPS, a Fortune 500 company like us, we have more resources than obviously a small business. And so we can work on multiple projects, see it to fruition, and then do the, feedback loop, running multiple ones at different times, targeting different markets at various time, testing things at different time. Versus a smaller company, and as I mentioned before, it's quality over quantity, right? You really have probably that one or two people at most, probably wearing multiple hats, trying to run a campaign. So you don't want to run too many. You want to make sure you do it right, you do it proper, so you get the information that you're trying to seek. The great thing about small businesses, though, is it's much more nimble. If you think about UPS, any advertisement that I'm suggesting today, it would need 90 sign-offs in order for us to even get that, thought to fruition. So I think as a small company, you could just very quickly test and see if it works. Do your due diligence without waiting a long timeline for that. And the final thing is the data availability. So at UPS, we have a ton of data. So, leveraging AI to do a lot of the analysis, and then coupling that with smaller focus groups or one-on-one interviews that I've done with many, many customers to either validate that information or gain a little bit more insight. And then when you take a look at smaller companies that don't have as much data, you're relying on, maybe more one-on-one interactions, which is great as well. I find even in my interviews with, if I'm looking on a particular journey, if I have 20 interviews, it gives me a lot of information to work with. So you could do a lot of great customer segmentation through that as well.
Excellent ideas. Thank you so much, Rowena. And Amanda, with what constant contact, the many things that you offer, I'd love to see or sorry, love to ask you how businesses can maintain that personal touch and authenticity when they're going from that smaller group of customers and then growing more and more and scaling.
Yeah, absolutely. So leveraging automations, segmentation, even AI, doesn't necessarily mean that you lose your personal touch or your human touch. It's really about scaling the best human moments, and being able to do it without having to spend hours in front of your computer screen, like we had to do in the past for automations and personalization. The kind of additions of these tools have really allowed small businesses to take what typically costs a ton of money and a ton of engineering work power to really apply it on an individual level. And so when you automate these messages, I think it's an opportunity to really leverage personalization moments. That could be name, that could be leveraging some of your purchase data. What are they purchasing? What groups are they in? Are these women? Are these people purchasing during certain seasons? What is their buying behavior to really allow you to personalize it? You want your user on the other end, or your customer on the other end going, this business really understands me. And this is also the power that small businesses have over the big guys, right? You heard Rowena just say it would take 90 sign-offs and lots of people's different opinions, right? With small businesses don't have that. You can get things out into market so much faster. And you know your customer best, right? You typically are your customer. You're trying to solve a need likely that you had. So lean into that personalization, lean into the local approach. And now with AI and automations, you're able to do it at scale.
And Amanda, can I ask like a follow-up to that? I'm curious, are there any examples of past campaigns that you've worked on that have been successful bringing in new customers? And like what was the creativity element, or maybe even like a low cost element for early stage entrepreneurs to
Yeah,
implement?
absolutely. So one of my favorite examples is a local coffee shop. They're actually happen to be 5 minutes from where I live. And what they did was they took their various different marketing and put in personalization to one of the examples was it's raining outside. It's really miserable. Wouldn't you love to have a hot cup of coffee in your hand? And they did that by taking weather data powered by AI, putting that into their emails. And so anytime the weather was kind of not ideal outside, they leveraged that with selling, products that would make you feel, warm and fuzzy on the inside. That's one example. Or they knew who their digital nomad audience kind of was, or the people that were working from home that really needed to get out of their house. And so when they had kind of down times or times where their cafe wasn't as full as they wanted it to be, they were able to send out emails to that audience to go, hey, we have, 4 or 5, open tables available. Come and get it. First coffee's on us. And so that really helped them, drive consistent volume when the weather wasn't ideal. So that's a fantastic way to personalize at scale, automate at scale, and drive, real human local connection all at the same time.
Yeah, that's so creative, and yeah, it does feel quite personal, and like sort of don't forget about us, or we haven't forgotten about you.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to Cole, Afnan, or Rowena, are there any campaigns that you've been a part of that would be a good example as similar creativity or a low cost effort to an early stage founder? Afnan, yeah.
Yeah, I did see a very I wish I had a video to share with everybody, but I was scrolling on TikTok a few weeks ago and I saw a local floral studio, I believe it was either in Alberta or in Ontario, but what they did was they have like it's a membership based arrangement. So they send you an arrangement every month of flower, and they did a survey at the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025 to understand their customer, what they liked, what they didn't. Basically just gather all the data necessary to understand their loyal customer. And what they did in 2025 is they created like a new membership for their customer. Every month they will have it's easier to watch the video than explain it. Basically, every month what they will have is um, one of the favorite arrangement of one of their loyal customer as like the, let's say, February highlight, March highlight with their name and their story and like how they're grateful for them for being like a loyal customer. And I just thought that was genius because it didn't cost them much than a survey. So it took cost them like time, but it also gathered them data. So that's a win-win. And absolutely the February one, I remember her name was Suzanne, like their client that they were featured. Absolutely anyone who saw that video wanted to be Suzanne from that moment on. Everybody want to feel like personalized. Everybody want to feel special, and I think they just like understood the assignment and they did like a very good job as putting that strategy together.
Yeah, what a great way to highlight a loyal customer, and so creative and thoughtful as well.
Yeah.
Nichole, you talked about advocacy a little bit earlier, and I feel like the storytelling or like showcasing customer success is an avenue of advocacy. How can that storytelling and customer success story build credibility with potential new customers outside of your personal network?
Yeah, coming from the advocacy background, Afna, what you just said made me so happy. I think that gratitude in general is a very, very underutilized lever that a lot of businesses either just don't know about or understandably don't have a lot of time for. Personalization and putting yourself out there in a way that maybe takes a little bit more time, a little bit more thought can slow us down in a sense. I think that's the perception that we get, and we all get to working and get busy super quickly. But I think it makes a really big difference, especially in the world. I'm seeing some stuff in chat coming up saying AI is taking over. There's so much on the internet. There's so much, I don't know if you call it noise, but there's a lot going on. And I think during a time where it's almost hard to find a focus or to break through, I think those opportunities that we have are getting to know people, our customers on a personal level, and using that as part of our way of saying thank you, of gratitude, and also part of our marketing strategy. Because that's one thing that AI doesn't have. It doesn't necessarily know our customers, their preferences, flowers, things like that. They don't have that information, but we do, and we can leverage that to be able to bring an authentic voice to the table. And so coming back to that storytelling piece, I think a lot of people are looking for a trusted and authentic voice. We used to do word of mouth, which we still do a little bit. Then it was Google, Google, Google. Now it's a little bit more on the ChatGPT, LLM, maybe even TikTok or Instagram side. But there's so much information out there that I genuinely think that authenticity is the thing that people are really searching for. People go back to asking their friends and family, trying to find what they think is a credible source online to be able to understand, is this product or service the right one for me? Storytelling can be such a powerful way to be able to break through and to be able to show people the human side of your product or service or what you're offering. Because I think really that's what a lot of people are looking for today, is something that's not just how many stars or a rating that might feel we don't know, is it a bot, is it real or not. We're looking for authenticity and proof that what that person is saying is their actual experience. So I think that advocacy and storytelling come into play really, really nicely there, because I think it's going to help people understand the product that you're selling and what it can actually do for their business. We're all looking for a little bit more connection, I think.
Absolutely. And to kind of follow on from that piece, how can they balance the short-term promotions like discounts or referral programs with long-term brand building and customer loyalty?
This is a good question. I don't have the perfect answer, and I think maybe some other people on the panel might have more insight into this. But when I was reflecting or thinking about this question as you were reading it, Isabel, the one thing that came to mind was that I think the word balance that you shared there is really important, at least to me in my mind. Balance is important because I have been a part of companies or seen other companies in the past that have given out discounts a lot. And I think it's a nice gesture. And I do think that it is a smart sales lever. It's interesting. Everybody wants a free trial or a discount or something for their money. I think that feels good. But it can also build a bit of a reputation. And if you're on a team where you're constantly offering discounts, you're constantly offering free things, that becomes an expectation. And that might be a little bit troublesome for you down the road. And so I would say, I think discounts and little things like that are a really great lever to pull, but be thoughtful maybe and be mindful about when and how often you're offering those, because you definitely don't want to get into a situation where it's costing you more money all the time to acquire your customers than it is to actually get that lifetime value out of your customer. You will consistently be battling that cost of acquisition if you are giving away your product or service for a lesser amount too much.
Again, Afnan, I feel like you'll be able to carry on from this as well.
Yeah, I feel like promotion and discount in general is more of like a door opener for your brand and your business. So like you acquire people with it, and then they need to find the value to stay. And that's why it's important when we say to understand your customer, to understand your persona, to go to the right people, because the right people will come for both your product and the promotion, versus someone who's just interested in the promotion will only come for the promotion and not stay long term. So basically, the promotion introduced someone to your brand, and then your loyalty strategy like should give them a reason to stay beyond the price point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I could just add one thing on top of that is, you know, I think it's important to follow up with a nurture program where the short-term promotion is to pique interest to get that maybe sale. But once you know there's the interest, now you kind of have to latch on to that. And to everyone's point here, show them that it's not just the price, it's the value now. And your nurture program needs to be very comprehensive to kind of show that, or you're echoing or trying to build a community that kind of just showcases the model or the community you're trying to build. Whatever it is, it just needs to kind of tie everything in. It can't be just transactional.
Excellent, excellent pieces of advice there. Thank you so much. All right, we have a few minutes left and we have a few attendee questions that I'd like to get through. So Deandra has asked a question around service-based businesses, which I think we've talked a little bit about service businesses, but there has been also focus on product-based. So for service-based businesses, what's the best way to get a proposal in front of folks like yourselves, to our speakers? So for instance, a training or development proposal. And if you want to come off mute to answer the question, Rowena, yeah.
I would say be bold, knock on the doors. I remember I had a friend, she was looking for a job, and this was back in the day. She wanted to go into the service industry, fun times, work at a restaurant, be a waitress. She's like, oh, they're hiring, so I'm going to submit my resume. I was, submit your resume. No, this is all about your service, your people, the vibe you give to someone. You need to just go there and provide your resume, try and get past the receptionist. But I think with today, everyone is, oh, let's see if we could do a Teams meeting. Let's see if we could just send an email. Put a little bit more work to it, especially if you're trying to solicit, a larger company. Do need to put in that little effort. I would suggest show up in person, knock on that door. If it doesn't work the first, maybe the second, follow up with an email. You have to be persistent. You have to be a go-getter in order to break down some of these barriers.
Love it. Thank you. Amanda, did you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, totally align with everything Rowena said. I'll give you a real life example. So when I actually first started at Constant Contact, we were at an event and we were approached by somebody who essentially wanted to kind of be our events, agency. And I thought it was just kind of one of a standard pitch, but boy, did he do his homework. To Arena's point, right? Like really go in, having done that homework, having done that research. He had laid out all the events that he felt we should be showing up at. And he had done the research the last year that Constant Contact either was or wasn't at that. And then how he would go about really, changing the way that we could show up at it and what he thought would be the potential ROI. So he had come baked in already, having done his homework, having developed what he thought was the right strategy. Even if it wasn't necessarily hitting every point, the fact that he had thought so deeply about how our businesses could work together, that just elevated him above everybody else that we were thinking about using as a vendor. So I think, going in like that, having thought about it, that's what's going to make you stand out amongst all the other vendors or potential knocks on the door that our companies get.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely stand out from the crowd. Chandra, I hope that answered your question. Someone has asked how to know when to start hiring employees / when to work with freelancers. So I guess it kind of talked about it slightly earlier with someone else who was their business was their side hustle, and knowing when that right moment is with traction. So Afnane, you come off mute if you'd like to give advice.
Yeah, sure. So transparently, I will say the best moment to outsource is when you can afford to outsource, because it is a cost for your company. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. And as any other things, if you want to have like outsource in marketing, there is like expert in marketing the same way you are expert in your field and in your business. So you're always going to benefit into outsourcing. I think the thing to, as a small business, especially if your brand is around like storytelling of your personal branding. So like if your brand and your business story is attached to your personal brand, it's very important to outsource execution and not direction at the beginning because you don't want to lose that voice. You want to keep the same voice in market to keep your authenticity and keep the trust that you build with time with your customer. So that's the thing that we'll be looking for at the beginning, at least.
Brilliant, thank you. In interest in time, we'll do maybe one more. There's a question here from Cheryl on the topic of storytelling. How does one feature a case study in a compelling way on their website? And is it as compelling, as impactful if you are to protect the client's identity? Nichole?
Yeah, we come up across this often in many of the roles that I've worked in the past. Not every customer is open to giving either their name or their company name, depending on what they're comfortable signing off on. And so sometimes that means you get their name, their company, and their logo. Sometimes it means you get none of those things or a combination of all of them. I would say I think it is definitely valuable. I think what you can also do is I think having it live on the website for reasons that I mentioned earlier, trustworthiness, authenticity. I think it's a great place for it to live on the website, but don't be afraid to repurpose and recut those stories too into different templates or versions that are going to be good for your reader, and to also repurpose on other channels that are good for your reader. We all know that attention spans are kind of changing over the years with the different technologies that we have. Long form case studies are amazing and tell a great story and are good for some people. But I think it's also great to be able to adapt those customer stories into multiple different types of content. Short form, single liners, call out quotes, Instagram ads or pages or things that you can post on LinkedIn and other variations like that. I think one story can give you a ton of marketing content. So I do think it is super beneficial to have that on your website. Even if they don't say the name, you can describe the customers, their industry, you could describe their level of employment if that's something that they're open to. But getting that out into the space and making the most of every story that you have, I think is really important.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Nicole. I'm going to squeeze one more in. Amanda, I feel like you might be the best person to guide this towards. Abby is wondering if there are guidelines around for different kinds of businesses for how many messages you can send out to your email list. So what kind of cadence should they be thinking about? They're feeling a little lost in it and want to start off on the right foot.
Sure. So I think that there's obviously CASL requirements, which is around consent. And so depending on the type of business that you have and who you market to, just thinking about explicit and implicit consent. If you're targeting people, essentially their business emails, there's a lower bar that you have to hit on consent. I'm happy to share some docs, and there's plenty if you Google CASL. And then there's like the best guidelines. Typically, we find small business and entrepreneurs aren't communicating with their clients as much as they should be, or that hit the best practices. There are those couple that do go overboard, but the bulk, if you think that you're doing too much, you probably still aren't, because you're competing against an inbox full of emails, a social media feed full of brands. So I think it is important to keep going. What you really want to focus on is personalization. So how do you make that person feel connected to you and to your business by offering content that is informative, educational, and useful. So make every connection that you're making, every piece of content, hit those parameters and do it often.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amanda. Alrighty, that is all that we have time for. I'm so happy with how much we got covered today between our questions that we had and some attendee questions as well. To our speakers, Rowena, Amanda, Afnane, and Nichole, thank you so much for joining today and for bringing your expertise to the table. And also, thank you so much for the energy that you brought as well. It's a lot to prepare for for these sorts of things. So really appreciate you showing up today and providing the incredible piece of advice for our entrepreneurs. We do have a feedback poll that has launched. We'd love to hear back from you. This is our way of retaining our participants and ensuring good quality in programming. So I would very much appreciate if you could take a few moments to answer that. Also, thank you to our attendees as well. Equally, you have a lot going on in your day, and I really hope that this was a valuable amount of time for you to come and learn from our speakers. And hopefully you've taken away some good pieces of advice from today's content. As I mentioned earlier, the recording will be on our YouTube channel in the coming days. So if there was anything you missed, you can rewatch it, no problem. And then a final thank you to our wonderful partners, the Scotiabank Women Initiative and UPS as our co-presenting partners, our ecosystem partners, Constant Contact, Mastercard and WEOC, and our community of community partners. I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you so much for everything you do for us to be able to put these sorts of sessions on for the entrepreneurs.